Hi, everyone. My name is Nissim Hershkovitz, and I'm a sophomore in the Business of Creative Enterprises program. Our last panel of the day is the Independent Music Artist panel. Over the last few years, the music industry has evolved drastically, and now the artist has more power than ever before. This panel will explore the power of being independent. Oh, I got it. Boop, boop, boop. From the top, I was on mute. Hi, everyone. My name is Nissim Hershkovitz. I'm a sophomore in the Business of Creative Enterprises program. The last panel of the day is the Independent Music Artist panel. Over the last few years, the music industry has evolved drastically, and now the artist has more power than ever before. This panel will explore the power of being independent, the case for signing to a major label, and where the future of the music industry is headed. Before I read the bios of the speakers, I'd like to thank Belle, who's a BCE freshman who provided all of the original music for the concert. Not for the concert, for the conference. In the future, she'll be in a concert. So, our first panelist is Jonah Rappaport. Jonah is a New York City-based A&R manager for 300 Entertainment. His day-to-day involves researching new artist trends and running label relations for the company. He studied at Syracuse University's Bandier program, entering the industry as an office manager in 2018 and working his way up in a few short years. Along the way, he's worked on records by Megan Thee Stallion, Gunna, Young Thug, and Mary J. Blige. He's passionate about nurturing students and has helped the Run 300's internship program since starting at the company. Our other panelist is Rob Kenner. Rob is the author of the New York Times bestseller, The Marathon Don't Stop, The Life and Times of Nipsey Hussle. He is also the founding editor of Vibe magazine. He was the music editor of Complex. He served as executive editor of Mass Appeal and is a founder of Boomshots Media. His specialties include hip-hop, reggae, dancehall, Caribbean music, African music, and social justice. The panel will be moderated by Professor Bob Lyons. Bob has over 20 years experience in media, including director of new media for radio and TV at WGBH in Boston, where he worked extensively with NPR, PBS, BBC, PRX, and other public media leaders. In addition to digital media, his professional background also includes producing national and international live radio concert broadcasts and recording/engineering. He is founder of a research and strategy consultancy, RS Lyons and Associates, which focuses on early stage entrepreneurs. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce the Independent Music Artist panel.
Hello, thank you for coming. Really want to thank Rob and Jonah for showing up. We have not yet met except virtually. Great to meet you guys. Welcome.
Good to meet you.
You guys all
How's it
excited?
going?
You guys all excited out there in LA about Sunday night, or not so much?
I'm in New York, so.
Oh, that solves that problem.
But I'm excited anyway. I
Very
love
good.
hip hop. I hear there's a football game on Sunday too, right?
Yeah, there's some kind of thing going on. It's actually a marketing
Yeah.
event that there's football wrapped around.
Right, okay.
So I thought I'd just start with Rob, and we'll get to Jonah next, and then maybe open it up to everybody. But I was thinking about your documentary about De La Soul.
Oh,
And
yeah.
It was very, very, the marathon continues. Can you say just a little bit about that, recap that? Because I want to get into the legal issues that arose from that and how that might play into their revenue strategies or their legacy.
Sure, yeah. So the De La doc is actually, De La Soul is not dead. And we made that at a time when De La Soul was in the middle of putting together an album that was funded all by their fans and the Anonymous Nobody. They did, I think it was either a Kickstarter or one of those crowdsourcing fundraiser things. And they raised in the mid to high six figures just off of the love that their fans have for their music, So it was a very interesting new revenue model. But, De La Soul, for those who have yet to discover their brilliance, it's crazy that a whole generation of music lovers who get all of their music through streaming really are going to discover this band for the first time this year, you know. And one of the things that you'll learn is that De La's music, especially the classic early albums, was just this incredible mosaic of samples. You know, Prince Paul and Mace, you know, they put together these amazing soundscapes, and that led to legal headaches. In the documentary, there's the story of a tiny little snippet of a record by the Turtles, which had been slowed down so you could barely recognize it, but their lawyer did recognize it, and they had like a $100,000, you know, legal case that had to be dealt with, which was a big deal. That was a lot of money, you know, at one time. So, yeah, De La Soul's music has not been on streaming services for a variety of reasons. One of which is all the samples that need to be cleared and the concerns that there might be some uncleared ones lurking in there. But it also had to do with a breakdown of, you know, the relationship between them and Tommy Boy Records, which was the label that really brought them to prominence. So thankfully that's been sorted out, and shout out to Faith Newman, who got involved, and the Reservoir Media team, and they you know, brokered a peace treaty. So the music will be on streaming this year, and I'm looking forward to seeing all these you know, younger hip hop listeners discover this group, because they're one of the greatest ever.
Thank you. That brings up the whole issue of major label records and contracts and deal structures with them. And I thought that'd be a chance to ask Jonah a bit about, well, just recap a bit about 300 Entertainment and how it differs from that traditional structure.
Yeah, definitely. So 300 Entertainment was started about 7 or 8 years ago by heads of various major labels at the time, who were looking at the music ecosystem and said, streaming is a new frontier. It's exciting. Companies aren't really focusing on this as much as they should be. Let's come together and start a company that's focused around digital and streaming, and also takes an approach of things that smaller boutique labels were doing at the time. So getting close to the artist, being hand in hand in decision making, and really forming a partnership. And that ethos of family mentality and a boutique approach to everything is, you know, has followed through from the beginning of the company till now. And we've been really thankful to work with a handful of really, really talented artists along the way.
So this being kind of a BCE program, and we deal with the business side of this a little bit more, I'm wondering if you can get a little more granular about sort of the structures that you guys favor versus what others might, or to the extent that you're able to talk about it without talking about individual deals, but just sort of the, you know, how that works.
Yeah. So as a record label, our income stream is based around copyrights and ownership of music that's recorded, packaged, and released in hand with artists who are signed to our label. So what happens is an artist may be independent at the time, in need of extra resources in order to grow their career, or something that they weren't able to access in the past, like a radio campaign or extra marketing spends or other various pieces of their career. A label will come in as a partner, kind of learn what they need to do in order to grow the artist, form a relationship, and use those resources to grow the career. And where the income side of that comes in is when money is made off of music that's released as a part of the joint partnership. Income gets broken down based on however the deal structure is. And as a company, we've always been an artist development company, and it's something where we want to get in early with artists and build years and years into something that, you know, flowers like a Megan Thee Stallion or a Young Thug or Amigos or Fetty Wap. And you know, that's our bread and butter, and that's the sort of thing we do. Where our deal structures change, I think, is just when we're getting in with artists. You know, some major labels have the capital to sign an artist that might be at a 4 or 5 or 6 stage in their career, spend a lot more money in order to capture that talent at that time, and then really explode it. Whereas as a smaller company, we a lot of times have to get in early and bet on ourselves alongside.
Very interesting. So it's more of a, you guys are basically working with early stage entrepreneurs more than people that have done a lot of work and are therefore less risky, which the majors can afford.
Exactly.
So I want to go back to Rob for a second, because as long as we're talking about screw ups by record labels, could you talk a bit about Nipsey Hussle and his dealings with record labels?
Sure. Well, Nipsey Hussle is now recognized as a visionary for his approach to the music business. And I think he came of age at a really pivotal moment. Before the panel began, me and Jonah were DMing back and forth about the DMCA, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. I haven't heard that mentioned in a long time. I'm not sure what stage Jonah was at. That was 1998 when that came
1998,
out. So,
Yeah. I was two.
Yeah. So, right. Yeah. But at the turn of the millennium, there was a sea change in the music industry. That was the moment when the Napster revolution was changing everything. And, between LimeWire and Napster and sites like that allowed kids in college to download pretty much any music they wanted for free. And the record industry was freaking out. And there was no iTunes, there was no Spotify, really. So it was just like a complete disaster. And the record industry was looking at their bottom line just dropping, So at that moment, artists who came out around that time included Nipsey Hussle. He was just getting started and paying attention in the early 2000s, right? And the first tapes that he was making, he was selling them hand to hand in the parking lot with hand, like Magic Marker labels. There at Slauson and Crenshaw. So it was, at that point, he was completely independent, completely unsigned. But like most young aspiring artists, he dreamed of getting a record deal. It was just like a validation that you were in the game, right? Mm-hmm. So he set up a meeting. Actually, his mentor, who is spoken of in my book, The Marathon Don't Stop, a gentleman named Dexter Brown, who was also a visionary, not really in the music industry, but he was a thinker. He was a photographer and an engineer, and he really instilled in Nip and some of the other artists that he was making a creative space for in his home that you should not be in such a hurry to sign with a label because you should control your own intellectual property. And he was just dealing with this from a ethical basis, right? He wasn't really in the music industry, but Nipsey wanted a record deal so bad. So he went up to Interscope Records. Dexter had done some photography for someone at Interscope, or he, through his photography work, he had this contact. So they went in, they played Nipsey's early demos, and he was so proud of the music and believed that, the label that was doing, like, at that time, they were doing like 50 Cent and, a lot of the music that he cared about, he thought they would recognize his brilliance, right? So he played the tape, and at the end, the executive said, well, the music's a little rough, but if you get in the gym and, get some lean muscle mass and work on your choreography, maybe, you could get somewhere, you could be like a teen heartthrob, And Nipsey was so disappointed that he just stood up and said, come on, Dexter, the meeting's over, we're out of here. And so that was an early moment when he kind of realized maybe Dexter was right, and maybe these labels don't always have perfect vision of what an artist is about, right? So in the book, The Marathon Don't Stop, we hear about why Nipsey ended up signing a deal. It really had to do with the situation he was in his life where he needed some money for a lawyer. And an offer was on the table with Epic Records. So he took the deal. Didn't really want to do it, but took the deal, got the lawyer money, got himself out of the case, and, continued on. But, honestly, with major labels, sometimes, executives move around, things change. The people that brought you in are not the people that are there at the time when it's time to pull the trigger, right? So that's what happened with Nipsey's debut album on Epic. He did the Bullets Ain't Got No Name mixtapes, which were great. And that was when I first met him, actually. He came to Vibe magazine in 2009, to present those tapes and wanted to be written up as a new artist. But, the big album never came out. And Nipsey made a decision to step away from the major label that he had signed with because he felt that they just, the new regime there didn't understand him as an artist. And he didn't agree with all the ways that he was being marketed, the images and the ways that he was being presented were not in sync with his vision. So at that point, he pursued a strategy that he summed up as fuck the middleman. I don't need anybody to be between me and my listeners. I can just go to them directly. And, this was made possible because of the digital technology. We'd moved past Napster. It was now the blog era. Nipsey was heavy on Twitter. His mixtapes, he was getting all the email addresses of his fans. You would download them by submitting your email address through his ihustle.com website, and you would get a zip file. And so he was very efficient in collecting the data, building a relationship with his audience, and really doing what I think a lot of artists now are able to do with Web3. It's the same kind of idea, like owning that relationship between the fan and the artist. And Nipsey did as much as he could do within that structure, but he reached a point in the late 2000s where he realized that it was not going to be possible to accomplish everything, not the late 2000s, in the 2015, 2016. That's when he realized, I can't get the radio spins. I can't tour the big arenas because the system is set up in such a way to prevent an independent artist reaching that maximum saturation point. So that's when he decided to go back to the major labels and had enough leverage because of the success that he had as an independent artist to negotiate better terms than he would have had he just walked in, without, that much momentum.
So he early on saw that it was about owning property, having a relationship direct, and using that as leverage to get what he needed later from in terms of resources.
Yes.
I think it reminds me of something that George Howard over at Berkeley says sometimes. He talks about you don't want to be a product for a purpose. You want to be a purpose for a product. And I think it kind of gets me into you, Jonah, talking about the 300 mission statement, which is quite powerful, quite a thing. And I'm wondering, I'm going to read a little bit of it, and then I want you to sort of comment on it. It starts out by saying 300 independence is in our DNA. Freedom to create, freedom to be an entrepreneur, freedom to write your own future. And it goes on to talk about it as a family of who empower with a purpose. Again, the idea that it's a purpose, not a product. Can you say a little bit more about sort of what the company is trying to accomplish?
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, we understand that we're not artists, right? We're there as the partner and the gasoline on the fire to grow careers. So for us, we come in to uplift artists as CEOs, as owners of their craft and of their mission. And it's about just learning exactly how an artist needs to grow and being there every day. And as a company, we're never gonna direct things in a way where it shouldn't be or push an artist somewhere where they're not comfortable. But we're gonna find the best path forward and make sure that they're still driving the ship every day. We talk about it all the time in artist meetings. We're in the passenger seat of the car, and the artist is driving the car. And we might have the GPS open in the passenger seat and help with maybe turn left or turn right, but it's the artist's neighborhood, and they know if there's a shortcut to go here and I have to make a right down this street, that's the way they're going to go. And we're going to put our hands up and say, that's fine. But, we're going to be there with the GPS and suggest things and, see if something works. And it's always an open conversation.
So our panel right before this was about crypto, and they started talking about NFTs. And Jonah, I'll ask you and then maybe Rob to comment on this, but you guys have been starting to get into that as well. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, NFTs are a really exciting space for music because it allows, like Rob was saying, artists to control the narrative around their product and really embrace that whole feedback loop between their fans, right? They're able to create something that has true ownership and they can see that out to their fans in a way where, if there are, lifetime passes for certain opportunities and certain things where you can really see who your super fans are. And obviously, like the previous panel was talking about, there's a lot of legal aspects to things that still have to be worked out around copyright and royalties and things like that. But as a way to grow an artist's career, it's really exciting. And we did something at the beginning of last year around Young Stoner Life Records release, which is a sub label of 300, where we put out NFTs commemorating each of the artists on that collective's growth and kind of the path they had taken to get to that point. So we use it as a collector's item and a way for fans to stamp their mark and say, I was here then and I'm a part of this, with, future rewards down the line, whether it be exclusive merch or concert tickets or, physical product like vinyl and signed pieces and things like that. So it's a really exciting way to enhance the fan experience around our artists.
How do you see that as playing into your sort of medium and long-term business strategy? What amount of the revenue pie or what amount of, customer acquisition, the sort of terms we use around here for this, do you see that as playing?
I think it's yet to be seen. Like our bread and butter is still copyright and music, and streaming is going to be the lion's share of our revenue. I think NFTs are exciting because in ancillary income, you can see some different areas and some growth, whether it be, selling NFTs as a part of an album rollout, and there are other income streams now that previously hadn't been opened up. But it's something that we're keeping our eye on and involving in conversations around releases. But I don't know if it's become, a new venture for us where we're going to fully embrace and take it on.
Early days, that's what Chevy Frank was saying as well. I want to shift a little bit now, Rob, because I wanted to touch on sort of the entrepreneurial side of Nipsey Hussle, which is, I think, worth a lot of exploration. Can you say a bit more about how innovative he was in developing new ideas for how to monetize and re-empower his community?
Definitely. And this dovetails perfectly with what you were just asking about Web3 and NFTs. Nipsey was one of the early voices encouraging other artists and just everyone who's part of his movement to look into crypto, look into, using new technology to empower yourself. He was always looking for the next thing. He once mentioned to me in an interview that it was like, his career just took off at the moment that the business was changing so much. It was like repairing the jets on a plane during takeoff, like they were trying to figure out new models. And one of the models that he arrived at was what he called Proud to Pay. This was a real game changer, and it's been studied and imitated by the mainstream music industry since he brought it out. But everybody remembers him as, if you know anything about Nipsey, you probably know that he was the guy that sold the $100 CD, right? So that was a mixtape called Crenshaw, which was available for free download on all the normal DatPiff and the streaming sites and stuff. But he asked his core supporters to do something more, that to actually give him something in return for all the free music that he'd been giving them prior to that. So he said, at midnight, the night before the tape drops, come to this store in West Hollywood, and we're going to sell physical copies, a limited run of physical copies for $100. And with that $100 investment, you're also going to get access to a concert that only my core supporters can attend. And, there was a lot of mixed opinions about that when he first announced the idea. There was a lot of people thought he was crazy, and who does this guy think he is, and all this stuff. But they sold all the CDs the first night. They sold $100,000 worth of physical CDs. and then made that, repeated it in other cities, Chicago, Brooklyn, moved around doing these Crenshaw pop-ups. On that first night, 10,000 of the $100,000 was from Jay-Z, who recognized the brilliance of this idea. And, today, if you see like a new Taylor Swift or Justin Bieber album coming out, there's usually what's called a bundle, right? That's one of the marketing strategies, which is directly, copied from Proud to Pay, from Nipsey's idea. So, you get the deluxe album that comes with tickets to the tour and maybe a t-shirt, or, it's the same concept, right? So Nipsey was a visionary, and that idea worked. And he did it again with Mailbox Money, where he sold it for $1,000 per copy and still sold like 60 of them, which was amazing. But he was, this is basically tokenomics, what we call tokenomics today, like tinkering with what is the right price point, how much do my fans, want to invest, and how much love is there. He talked about a value cloud over his head, and he was sticking a pin in it to let it rain down. And that's basically what Web3 is allowing artists to do now. I've actually been consulting with a new platform. It hasn't launched yet, but the website is up now, called EQ Exchange. And it's one of many Web3 companies that's allowing artists new ways to empower themselves and also reward their supporters. But the basic idea that, there is a value cloud that an artist builds up, the love for their fans, from their fans, is a thing that can be accessed. When I started, my music journey, I collected vinyl. That was how I experienced music. And I remember there were certain releases where people would line up at the record store at midnight, and just the same way they were lining up for Nipsey's pop-up shop, but with streaming, the relationship of the listener and the music is a little less passionate to me. It's like you're turning on the water or something. It's not that idea of like, I'm collecting this, I'm at the record shop, there's only one more copy of that new single from Prince and I need that copy. And I think that NFTs bring some of that specialness back and that excitement, and allow fans to really say, I was a day one Nipsey Hussle fan, I was a day one Shy Glizzy fan, whoever the new guy is, I'm going to be one of the 1,000 people that got the first NFT drop of this record, and I'm going to be proud that it's in my wallet. And you know what I mean? And then, as you mentioned, Jonah, like, there's access that you can give for those people who support the artist in that way. So it's a very exciting moment for artists, and I think that's why this panel is a really well-timed conversation to be having, because artists have been hurting through the pandemic. It's been 2 years where tours are very difficult to put together. We're just seeing some live dates starting to be announced now, but over the past couple of years, we've seen like Versus and, virtual performance things online, but the old ways of making money haven't worked. And streaming really isn't a sustainable life, wage for the vast majority of musicians. The top stars have a better rate, but, for a lot of the people who are just, great artists that aren't the most famous artists in the world and aren't doing sort of like the most mainstream hits, it's hard to make a living from, your Spotify check and your Apple Music check, and I think that's why the whole Joe Rogan thing has been such a hot button issue, not only because of the vile things he says on his podcast, but because it highlights the fact that artists aren't getting compensated. And, this guy's getting $100 million to spout this, misinformation and racism. So it's very, it's a teachable moment, I think, and it's important to have these conversations.
Well, there's a lot there to unpack. There's the movement from the business towards transactional, which is the Spotify, here's my money, here's it's like turning the water, as you say, versus relational, which is what Nipsey Hussle was doing with those drops, and what it sounds like Jonah's doing as well. So, Jonah, I want to ask you, given that this is this pivotal sort of moment in time where you've got artists coming out of this desert that, where COVID shut down a mainstream of main source of income, where the streaming thing is just not sustainable in terms of being a major part of the artist revenue unless you're, one of the top ones in the spike. And you've got this new thing with NFTs, which build on that relational, connection with the fans. What advice would you give an artist or a young artist, or for that matter, anybody interested in the music business in any role for this particular point in time?
Yeah, I think right now what's most important is nurturing your fan relationship and understanding how that feedback loop works and listening to fans, understanding what they want and super serving them. Because regardless whether you're in a quarantine situation where things are mostly virtual or you're on the road playing shows every night, the people who are transacting with your business as the CEO of your artist career are your fans, and finding a way to have your fans that are already in your ecosystem want to come back and keep spending their money, and then also finding ways for those people to go tell their friends and enter into your ecosystem is still as important as it's ever been. So I think regardless of the noise and shininess of new frontiers, it's really important to keep your focus on your fans and find ways to grow that fan base.
How would someone come to your attention? What are you looking for when you're looking for new additions to the family?
I always start with the music. It's important to have a strong, musical base, to have a talent that's there to be able to, craft content that people want to gravitate towards. But I also look at the way people interact with what you're doing. I think if there's excitement around things, if there's a hysteria, if things are growing exponentially or things are going viral, I look at why those things are happening and try to understand if it's something that starts with the artist themselves, or if maybe the moment is outside of that artist and there needs to be a different conversation. But I'm always taking in different variables and trying to find artists that are true artists. We say all the time, we only have one of ones at our company, and no artist on our roster is like any other artist. And I think when you start playing the game of, that's a discount version of artist A, or, that person is in the same lane as artist B, it can get cluttered. And we really like to stay with one of ones and unique artists.
So you mentioned looking at different variables. I know your company has sort of leaned into analytics in a big way. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because that's outside the talent realm. That's sort of more in the in the management artist relation realm.
Yeah, like Rob was saying, where streaming nowadays is a spigot you can turn on. With that kind of access, there's so much music out there. So it's important to be able to find where the talent is, and data plays a really nice role in allowing us to filter things and determine what we're looking at and where things are coming from. So we have a really strong research A&R team that day to day is looking at charts around the globe and different DSPs, Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, and trying to see which fan bases are most engaged in unsigned artists and independent artists, and where an inflection point might be and how we can be the best partner for those artists, and then trying to get in touch and have a conversation with an artist on how we can help them and grow their career, and then hopefully get into something contractual from there.
It's kind of cool to see the overlap between data scientist and A&R kind of happening there.
Definitely.
All right. Well, I want to quit hogging you myself and share you with our audience here. I want to see if we have anybody here who might have some questions for our panelists. Great. Karthik Ramaswamy is going to join us. So hang on a second, guys. Neeson is our ringmaster here.
Hi guys, good to see both of you.
Hey.
So, one question from the audience is, if and when there is an opportunity to sign, whether it be with an indie label or a major, what should an artist factor before taking that leap of faith?
You want to go first, Jonah?
Sure, sure. I think it's important for an artist to understand whatever the situation is they're getting into, to have an honest conversation with whoever that partner may be, and ask right questions, and understand what they're getting into, and also understand what they need. If an artist is entering into a label situation in the thought process that Nipsey had, where a label is the end all be all goal, sometimes you can get distracted, I think, by that shiny object. And understanding that as an artist and an independent artist, where you're running this business that you've created, you have to look inwards and be introspective and say, what am I missing? And how can this partner fill those voids and help me get to the next step?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, Jonah. And, the bigger context is important to remember that right now in 2022, there's never been more things that an artist can do for themselves before they go into a partnership, right? So, we're in a time where you can promote your music yourself, you can release your music yourself. There's, lots of options to grow your career. And basically, there was a point where, to use Nipsey as an example, where he needed the partnership with Atlantic to accomplish certain things that were on his list of goals. But he also recognized that the ownership that he wanted to maintain was not going to be just offered to him walking in the door on day one. He had meetings with the label and knew what he wanted, but they were telling him, you're not there yet. Like, you don't have enough leverage to demand these terms. And so you're putting yourself in a better position if you can get certain things done on your own before you decide, okay, I now need a partner to get radio or to tour stadiums or whatever it is. So, just be aware that there are more tools out there than ever before. And Web3 is one of those tools. I think it's important for artists to do the homework and educate themselves before you jump in. But it's a very exciting landscape right now for independent artists.
For sure. So another question from the audience that sort of ties into that is, how do you all recommend independent artists supplement their income outside of music? And within the music industry, what are some secret streams of income, if they exist, that you all believe musicians should explore?
Secret streams of income. I've heard of artists bootlegging their own shit. Do you remember this was a thing, like, in the time when bootleggers were, this is pre-Napster, but like, if your record leaked and then people had the CDs on the blanket on the street before release date, that was a big problem. But then artists figured out, okay, I can bootleg my own shit, and that's a secret stream because, maybe they had signed a contract that was not to their advantage. And, but I don't know about secret stream, but merch and, merch is a huge part of every artist. Look at, Kanye West, Travis Scott, merchandise is like a huge part of business now. I don't know, is 300 also doing other, like, are you involved in merch when you sign an artist, or is that their own thing?
Yeah, we're involved in merch in the rollout of the process. We have a fan engagement department that focuses on, whatever an artist might be into, whether it's merch or, unique vinyl or packages and things like that. But yeah, I think like an artist isn't just a music artist, right? Like, I think if artists are thinking about their business as being an artist, there are tons of different avenues, and you can put out visual content that isn't music. You can create merch. You can put up live streams and have people pay tickets and have access. So there's a lot of different ways to be a full artist in order to make some extra money. But it all comes down to convincing people to pay for a service that you're giving them.
100%.
Brand partnerships too. I just saw Megan Thee Stallion at the Coach store, like that was the latest one. But between Saweetie with the the fast food meals, and like there's a lot of ways to get a bag at this point. But I guess in the early stage is what you're asking about. Nissim right. It's the people that aren't being asked yet to do billboards for Coach. I mean, yeah, I saw one service that is offering you can pay like $300 and an artist will sing you a Valentine's song. Like they will, you know, like these are not super well-known artists, but a company that you can basically have them write and sing a song, put your girlfriend's name in it, and you know have it ready for Valentine's Day. So that could be another secret stream.
There you go. Thanks for the tip.
Maybe I'll have to use that.
So last question. This is more to Jonah. Someone from the audience asked, 300 has moved into film. What is your take on that expansion, and what was that going to look like?
Yeah, so we for those of you who don't know, we recently launched 300 Studios. The first piece of content is an upcoming Bubba Wallace Netflix documentary called Race that's premiering on February 22nd. So, you know, music and film has always gone hand in hand. You saw it in the 90s with Def Jam, and Billie Eilish has movies, Justin Bieber has movies. I think artists have always wanted to be movie stars, and movie stars have always wanted to be artists. So it's something that goes hand in hand. And for us, it allows us to tell stories of our artists in ways that we haven't been able to in the past, right? Whether it's more passive in a way with this documentary, where we're able to have a hand on the soundtrack and the music aspect of the project to plug our artists and highlight developing talent, and also further down the line to build out full content series around our artists and tell stories that have, you know, more of an edge than maybe just a music video or a live stream on social media.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys both. I'm going to turn it back over to Bob to close it out.
Cool.
So awesome, guys. So I think back into the idea that the music business is a business, and businesses change. And I think, if you had to make a prediction, what the music business is going to look like in 5 years from now, knowing what we know now, I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to want you to do a crystal ball here. What's going to be the biggest changes 5 years from now? And I'm going to start with Rob, because you're in the bottom of my screen.
Okay, I'll take that. Well, I think everybody, we started talking about the Super Bowl in the beginning of this, right? And so on Sunday, there is a football game, and in the halftime show, the part that I think people are most excited about is, seeing the legends of, Death Row Records coming together on the 30th anniversary of Death Row Records. And, we were excited just for that alone, right? And shout out to Jay-Z for brokering the deal, getting hip hop on that big stage, the world's biggest stage that day. We knew it was going to be Dre and Snoop and Kendrick, and who else is on there? Mary, Eminem is on there too, I think. Anyway, in LA, it's great, but how much greater is it that Snoop now owns Death Row Records? Like that just happened this week. And, he had been trying to buy it for a while, apparently. There was an interview in GQ where he said he made an offer to the previous owner and they didn't let him buy it. But I think we're going to see more of that. We're going to see more artists owning their own shit and, empowering other artists in ways that maybe the old school record industry did not want to see happen. The rules of the game were not written by artists and creative people or music fans even. They were written by, very calculating business minds that were saying, look, if we can get in between this exchange, the artists do things for passion and the fans do things because they love the music. They'll do anything to get that music. The business rules were not created by people that had that same shared passion. That's just my honest belief. And, companies like EQ Exchange and other Web3 companies are coming to allow artists to have the tools to empower themselves. And I think that's the direction that this whole thing is going.
Very good. Thank you. Jonah, what do you think?
I on a very similar note, I think, artists have more leverage than they ever have. And they're able to bring their full fan bases with them along the journey in a way where they maybe haven't had touch points in the past. So in the next 5 years, you're going to see artists really crafting the narrative around their career and being able to, you know, do things wholly without labels and in a traditional setting and tap into different revenue streams and other forms of capital where they need it, whether it be a distribution partner or, you know, just someone to do their merch or just someone to help them on touring. So, you know, I think artists are going to be able to be in the driver's seat much more now. And in the next 5 years, you're probably going to see a shift towards more hand-in-hand approaches between labels and artists, and highlighting them as the CEOs of their business. They really are.
Very good. Thank you. And I got one more audience question. Is that right? Okay, Valeria is going to get to it.
Hi, Jonah. Hi, Rob. So we got one audience question. So for us, especially the seniors, going out there, how did you get where you are now? And is there any advice that you can give for us going into real jobs?
I don't know about real jobs at all. I have no knowledge of real jobs, but I got where I was by writing letters with stamps and envelopes, placing them in mailboxes. There were no emails. There was no social media. I was trying to get on it. Quincy Jones's new music magazine, Vibe. This is 1992. So the rules are quite different. But today, I would say for a writer, just write. You don't need a magazine to hire you. You can do it yourself. It's the same that we were saying about musicians. You can, create content with your phone. And if you're doing great work, be consistent, build your fan base, and someone's going to come to you if it's good. That would be my advice. But Jonah, your rules will be much more applicable to the current situation. So what do you say?
The best advice I can give is to take that next step in your own hands. I think a lot of kids come out of school and have a very LinkedIn approach to the way they're trying to find a job in the music industry. And not that that's wrong in any sense, but I think people come in and say, hey, I have this experience and this piece of paper and a resume. I deserve this, like, give me this job. And I think the most successful approaches I've seen are kids who come out of school and start working and start doing what they want to do in a job, whether that's managing artists or being an A&R in their own right and finding talent and developing it, and starting that work and bringing it to a company and seeing a job opening and saying, look, I'm already doing these things. I can help your company because I'm already doing them. And just having that different framing of what they're doing and coming into an environment and saying, I'm ready to go and take that next step is really successful. And really just like my day one advice is just get in the door somewhere and go from there. Don't be too picky at your first stop. Your first stop is not your last stop. Get somewhere, start working. If it doesn't work out, you can always go somewhere else. But getting that first job is definitely the most important.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was very helpful. I will pass it on again to Professor Bob Lyons for the closing of this amazing panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so as we wrap up here, I just want to ask you guys if you have any parting thoughts, any closing thoughts, anything that you would leave folks with, or that we didn't get to that maybe we should do next time. And I'll let
I have a question.
Yeah.
I want to ask Jonah a question.
Sure. Yeah,
So-
absolutely.
We were talking about the analytics, and 300 really came into the space as a more technologically savvy, social media savvy record company. So I'm curious if you saw the podcast where Q-Tip was talking with some folks, and Mecca was there, my friend Mecca. Shout out to Mecca. They were talking about Q-Tip had this young rapper, female rapper from Texas that he thought was dope, and he was trying to get a deal for her at one of the labels he had a relationship with. And, he came in and said, I'm Q-Tip and I say she's dope, you should sign her. And at that stage, even though, his track record is pretty, impeccable of spotting talent, the label that he approached said, well, the numbers aren't there yet. And it's not, that we don't trust that you're a good judge of talent, but we're going to give her this low ball offer. And he was so insulted by the offer. He's like, just tell me you're not interested. Don't even insult me with that offer. So the artist was Megan Thee Stallion. And, you know, that label at that time, despite Q-Tip's cosign, thought that her numbers weren't good enough. So why did, first of all, have you ever seen that podcast? And second, like, you know what 300 saw in the numbers that whoever, I think it was maybe Columbia, I forget what label it was, but the other people didn't see because you made a good call.
Unfortunately, I have not seen or heard the podcast, but I am familiar with the story. And for us, right, like I was saying before, where you're taking in all these variables to make a decision. You know, when an artist is really early, sometimes it's not the right time to enter in that partnership because maybe an artist needs to grow a little bit more. And for us, in the time that we made that decision, in November of 2018, you know, Megan had this record, Big Ol' Freak, that was really working in Houston. And, you know, we saw it was a really hyper local thing at the time, but she came to New York and did a show, I think in Queens. And a couple of our staff went to the show, and, you know, the roof was popping off the place. Her fans were lines out the door, and, you know, you could feel the energy in the room. And, you know, from then, you know, we knew, and there was no doubt about it. But I think, you know, sometimes you have to see it to believe it. And, you know, we were just thankful to have been there at the right place at the right time. And it's been an amazing journey since then.
No doubt.
So Jonah, any last thoughts, or maybe you want to put Rob on the spot?
No, I really appreciate you having us here. It's Rob. It's been great to share the space with you. You know, I'm really interested in everything you're doing in Web3, and I think you've exactly hit the nail on the head on the way it's opened up opportunities for artists these days. Do you see artists now being able to lean on Web3 as a major stream of income for their career, or is it something where you think it's just, you know, a piece of the puzzle?
Well, everything is a piece of the puzzle, but I think the potential is very much untapped at the moment. I think there's still so much education to be done around what Web3 is and what it isn't. We're seeing so much hustling and bag chasing and rug pulls and just bad actors in the space. You know, the panel just before us was so on point about, you know, these crypto bros that are running rampant, and, you know, a lot of, you know, fancy language to cloud what this is really about, you know. And it reminds me of record label contracts from back in the day. You know, things are not presented in a transparent way to empower everyone with knowledge. So what NFTs can be is not what they are right now. That's what I would say. And what it really is just a way to own that relationship. It's like a, you know, certificate of ownership for, like, I equate it to like the ultimate fan club, right? You know, and getting back that kind of, you know, passion that I was talking about earlier when you lined up at the record shop to get the record. You know, there are people that want to be super engaged with the artists they really care about and want to support them and have access and ways to communicate with them through membership in this elite fan club, if you will. So it doesn't have to be a ton of money either. It can be for emerging artists as well. Most of what we've been hearing about is like super wealthy artists getting wealthier with NFT drops, and sometimes not even respecting the fans that are putting the money in to make them wealthier. But that will all get deaded, and we will see what we call at EQ Exchange, we call it a mutual exchange of gifts. So it's not like an investment scheme or a pyramid scheme. It's literally just a space to hand, you know, I love your music, I'm going to support this music, and you're going to reward me with maybe a financial stake in the streaming, maybe access to a type of merch that nobody else has, maybe access at shows or Zoom conferences to talk about the video treatment for the next single, like having a relationship with the fans. And so I think that is potentially a huge new revenue source, and one that hasn't really been properly executed that way yet. But the rule book is still being written. It's super early, but it's going to be a new layer of income on top of the other ones. It doesn't replace, nothing replaces everything else, but it's a much needed enhancement to the toolkit for artists who are basically they're startup businesses, right? You're launching your career, it's a startup, and having ways for people to support that business. My dog agrees. So yeah.
I agree.
I think that's where we're going with this. And if you want to learn more, EQ Exchange website has a lot of educational materials, and the app will drop next month. So it's going to be a lot of excitement.
Very cool. Thank you very much. Well, I want to thank both of you guys for a really interesting panel. And I've certainly learned a lot. I think our audience has as well. And at this point, I would thank you again and turn it over to our director of the BCE, Mr. Wes Jackson. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you.